Hello and welcome to One on One. I am Cyril Stover. In 1977, Nigeria hosted the second World Black and African Festival of Arts and Culture, Festac 77. Now, the hosting of that festival led to the establishment by law of a government agency with the responsibility of promoting and propagating Black and African cultural heritage. The Center for Black and African Arts and Civilization, CBAC, says it aims to promote public interest in understanding and appreciation of Black and African arts and culture with a view to emphasizing the contributions of Black and African peoples to world civilization. Today, our attention is on the place of arts and culture in development and Nigeria's role as arrowhead in promoting African heritage globally.
From one hotel room to another one. This is the game changer seat. Fly Emirates, fly better.
All right, joining me now is the Director General of the Center for Black and African Arts and Civilization, CBAC, Honorable Aisha Adamu Augie. Thanks for being with us in One on One.
Thank you so much. I would say Uncle Silo. So thank you for having me.
All right. Well, it's probably the fallout of Festac 77 when it was created. And I do recall that CBAC was initially an agency of the Federal Ministry of Information, but that arrangement has changed now. So tell us about CBAC.
Yes, so the Center for Black and African Arts and Civilization obviously is an agency, as you mentioned, that came out of Festac 77. It's a Pan-African agency under the Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism and Creative Economy. And this administration, under the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, decided to have it as a standalone. Tourism was actually added after the fact because we have understood that creativity and culture come hand in hand, and tourism was an aspect that could also feed into that. So it was returned back to the ministry. We do have a minister that is a cultural enthusiast, an artist herself. The Honorable Minister is Barrister Hannatu Musa Musawa, and the idea is to focus on the contribution of arts, culture, tourism and creative economy to obviously our GDP when it comes to job creation, youth engagement, and just the general well-being of our people. And CBAC is here as one of the cultural diplomacy arms of the ministry.
Well, straight away, people would say it's a little bit unclear how you can use arts and culture beyond the display of the arts and culture, how you can use it to drive a creative economy. And so the question would be, link this up for us, because in the past, everyone just saw that the only aspect to arts and culture is perhaps entertainment and just putting up a display, and after all, you just go home.
Yeah, so most people would think that. But let's use Festac 77 as an example. Just because we were having Festac 77, we had 59 Black and African nations in Nigeria, from all over the world, obviously, coming to Nigeria. And because we were hosting them, a lot of infrastructure came with the event. So the National Theatre that you know today, many of the roads and bridges in Lagos, a lot of the hotels, the Festac town at that time was the largest satellite town ever in I think at the time it was Africa, but I would say West Africa, just to be safe. And today it's still one of the largest spaces where humans reside. But apart from that, you're looking at the infrastructure, so that automatically tells you many jobs were created. A lot of people think events are things that, we just waste money and hang out and have fun. But culturally, globally, cultural diplomacy is extremely important. Getting mutual understanding and knowing each other's culture, learning to know about each other, promotes mutual understanding. Obviously, peace, security, it keeps people happy, and when you get to know yourselves, just by engaging at events like this, it creates a huge network. So look at, for example, 59 Black and African nations were here. Nigeria was the leader across the Black and African nations, and since Festac 77, we've not had a cultural event or movement. I don't even like to call it an event. It was a movement. It was a Pan-African movement that said, listen, we are all over the world. We can come together. We have our culture interconnecting. We have the same blood. We have the same color in some instances. And we're here together to see how we can promote the growth of Africa and Black nations. Today, Black people are struggling all over the world. Africa is basically behind when it comes to the growth and development across the world. You can see where we are today. Our resources are being taken, our people are being taken, and we're not growing as fast as other continents. So CBAC was very important. Most of the countries were meant to have a CBAC office and a CBAC desk so that we continue to do these things, and a different country would host the festival. But unfortunately, with the lack of stabilization, should I say, of Africa, we've not been able to achieve an event that big again, unless it's political or financial.
Well, interestingly, CBAC was meant to domicile all the instruments and those props
Yes.
that were used in Festac 77. Did that really happen?
So today, we are around 48 years. And the agency houses all of the items that came to Nigeria in trust for all the other countries. Just today, I was looking at our inventory of over 400 pages of items that we have within the agency. So I'll break it down. We have an archive department. We have the museums department. We actually have a museum that shows the different shared heritage across the different Black countries that we have in our building. We have artifacts from all over Africa. We have a research and publication unit with over 120 publications that is focused on purely Black and African research, and obviously continuing to build on the growth of Black and African people and our civilization. And as you said earlier, the contribution of these different people to the world. Africans built the world. We were taken as slaves. We built everywhere else. So it's important for us to continue to hold on to that history by preserving it. So as you can see, we have 48-year-old artifacts in our space. We have a children's unit because it's important to get them young. We also have, obviously, the directorate, and then we also have different spaces. We're supposed to be an African Heritage Center. We received that status in 2002. And we are hoping to have an African Heritage Museum very soon.
There's something I really want to ask about, and I do recall in Festac 77, one key aspect of it was the colloquium.
Yes.
Whatever happened to all those discussions, all those papers that were presented at the colloquium?
We have them in the archive. Today, as I speak to you, we have a colloquium book that has the 10 different sectors across Africa with a plan as to where we were going to be in the future. And this book is something that everybody should have because it shows us where we were at that time and where we wanted to go. I think we all need to revisit that to see the contributions we can make to achieve the growth of Black and African people across the world. Like I said, with the research and development unit, it is very important to preserve those things. So we have, as CBAC, been having collaborations with institutions globally on research. We do calls for papers, but instead of the colloquium, we're doing an international conference that culminates into a book that brings researchers, professors, cultural enthusiasts, people within the creative sector, the art space, to come and tell us what they are doing, where they are. We have this every year. In fact, you have one of the books sitting here on the table. This book was from last year's international conference. And we have another one that we are about to publish very soon on cultural diversity. So unfortunately, it's been an underfunded agency because the Festac dream to continue across Africa hasn't been happening. So it's been left behind in a way. And as Festac at 50 is coming up, it's a reminder that we should continue to have these things. And this administration decided, Let us empower this agency. Let us be the leaders across Africa. Let Nigeria continue to be the cultural leader, and obviously in other aspects of society.
All right. We'll take a short break here for this message, and we'll return and discuss in greater detail CBAC and its activities.
Just close the doors, and you're in a world of your own. Travel is not just about the destination, it's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better.
All right. So you have a rich repository of all these that you've talked about, and you've spoken about collaboration with institutions, global institutions, in terms of research. How have institutions within Nigeria keyed into this, particularly our educational institutions?
Yes, so we do continue to collaborate with them. We have universities that we work with, but another aspect is not just the education side, right? Within the archive and within the museum and our audiovisual unit, we have over 1,200 vinyl records of authentic indigenous music within our space. 1,200 to be better. So with all of these narratives, there's something we call subliminal programming. You're a journalist, I'm sure. You know that very well. So you have subliminal programming where people are groomed to believe certain things. And when you drop who you are, you cannot thrive. We will continue to fail if we don't remind ourselves of who we are, who we were, and how our authentic indigenous ways were great for us, great for the environment, great for sustainability. And these are the items that when you look at jazz and juju and all these things, I went to Zulu recently, I think in December, and I went to visit one of the shrines. And it was very, very intriguing for me because when I went to meet the people in charge of that space, they had cultural ways. Like, for example, they will tell you if you're coming to pray to our gods, where the divinity is seen like the crocodiles, they feed the crocodiles and the crocodiles go back into the water, and this is supposed to take your prayers and hopes to the gods, right? These people were telling me, if you enter this space, you have to be honest, you cannot be wicked, you have to have a communal sense of living, thereby whatever it is you're coming to wish for should be good for society. So we had these rules and regulations that other religions are telling us about also.
So how would you then say it came about that these values and systems were eroded and we got to the stage where it was all classified as idolatry?
Yes.
Especially when we brought in the concept of religious faith. And how do you cope? How do you begin to change this mindset? Because if you're talking to
Yes.
in a country such as Nigeria, where you have two major religions,
yes, which we all have decided which one to pick, right? So for someone like me,
and
yes.
how do you begin to tell the story when you have to go and visit a shrine and someone says, isn't that idolatry?
Yes. So the thing is, it really depends on perspective. What is the most important to you? We have community people who have never heard of Islam or Christianity. We still have them to this day. In some communities in the grassroots, I've experienced some of them myself, where we've had to even take clothes to them because we felt the way they were living was not the best of ways. But you see, it does not delete who we are, right? If you know that this is what you had. We were having arguments on some of the movies we see, right, in the Western communities. So, for example, you have the likes of Thor, who had a hammer and used thunder. So if you go to the Yoruba, it's the Shango, for example. You have the goddess of the water. So all of these things have been turned around into mythical stories that the world has changed for their own benefit. But these are things that existed. We had rules and regulations in almost all of the cultures that we had. They all had a system, whether it was religious, they believed in something. Whether it's based on the community, they believed in something. And when these things are deleted, I'll keep saying this over and over again because we need to remember who we were. We cannot say that obviously we're not going to take on or accept the external influences. Whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. It's not just about Africa. Religion is something that cuts across the global community. But it's a spiritual journey for each individual. I was brought up by a Muslim dad. My mother was Catholic growing up. So for someone like me who's open-minded about what religion is, you tend to see spirituality ahead of everything else, humanity ahead of everything else. Today, a lot of the issues we have globally are connected to these belief systems where people think they are above the other, where we have serious extremism because you want to be a part of this community and this is what you're holding on to. And it's causing a lot of rift. And I think if you look at the way Africa was with the different kingdoms, the different emirates, the belief systems were there, but we still believed in oneness.
Okay.
We still did. And our hope is to tell these stories from an open-minded perspective so that people can say, oh, so this is the thought process. This is why we're dropping this to take on this. There's a good and bad in everything. But we cannot accept to say that everything we have or are is bad.
Okay. It's getting more interesting, and there are so many other angles we'll take on in just a moment.
Fly Emirates, fly better.
Today we talk about cultural diplomacy, and this is one of the things CBAG is setting out to do. Let's get into that and tell us just how you're progressing with this and what it entails and what the possible outcomes.
Okay, so our culture travels ahead of us. The world knows us based on our films, our music, our food. Remember when there was the Jollof Wars? Everybody was talking about it. Some people had never tasted it in their life, but it became a huge topic, and that is part of our culture. The same with our film, the same with our music. So our culture precedes us. Sometimes when you go to a space and they've heard about you, you walk in, it becomes like a topic of discussion. Immediately, I'm Nigerian. The first thing they'll say is, oh, football, right? Food, music, film, because they've gotten it ahead of us. And that's basically what cultural diplomacy is. But we are being extra deliberate. You look at China, for example, they have Chinatowns globally. And what that has done is anywhere you want to get Chinese food or Chinese products, you can get that in Chinatown. Korea is moving. You look at Turkey when it comes to food. Turkey, the Turkish food is moving and it's becoming a form of receiving and building on their own economy. It goes back home and it also creates jobs for their diaspora. The same with Lebanese food, the same with Italian food. I don't see why Nigeria cannot be everywhere or all the different African aspects. We get restaurants and it's African, right? But we have the different forms within Africa. So what we believe is that the world needs to understand us. We have been shut out, and if we're able to connect culturally, I started this job last year, and within the last year, we've had diplomatic missions where we go to learn about other people's cultures and they come to Nigeria. So I give examples: Bulgaria, China, South Africa, the US, UK, Serbia, so we can keep going on the list of people. At CBAC right now, we have had meetings with 26 Francophone and Lusophone ambassadors. We believe in Africa today, we have a lot of issues. And if we can culturally connect initially, we can say, okay, we're friends. Why don't we sit down and fix these issues? Whether it's peace and security issues, if we come together culturally, we can see ourselves as, we can call ourselves siblings. We can realize that we have a lot of things in common. So, for example, we have an exhibition called Our Shared Heritage. And our shared heritage has, for example, drums from Cuba that look like the ones we have here. We have calabashes from Australia that looks like what we have here. We have architectural designs, the old school made out of mud and toothpick designs within our archive that showcase the beauty of sustainable African architecture that was made for our climate. And then we see the interconnection between the two. So what cultural diplomacy does for us is it opens up the door for conversation. It opens up the door for people to be intrigued. We can't just only focus on finance and politics. And that is why we have diplomatic missions. That is why almost every embassy in Nigeria has a cultural institution attached to it where people can come to learn their languages, people can come to learn about their culture, right? And we believe Africa should be able to do the same.
There's an interesting connection, as you started talking about, not everything has to be finance and politics.
Yes.
But there's a link somewhere within the politics, the heritage of African peoples, who we are, and how that has reflected in our democratic norms, not necessarily the ones we have adopted from other climes,
yes,
but the ones that defined African and Nigerian societies in the past. And that's where we'll go to next after this break. Stay with us.
Close the doors, and you're in a world of your own. Travel is not just about the destination, it's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
One on One, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network.
From one hotel room to another one. This is the game changer seat. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Right, we're still here with Honorable Aisha Adamu Augie, the Director General of CBAC. That's the Center for Black and African Arts and Civilization. Who we are as Africans, our heritage, how much of that has reflected in our politics? Because I'm looking at that now. Even if we say not everything should be about politics, but how have the real people, our heritage, how has that reflected on the kind of politics we practice today?
Yeah, so we have a very terrible tribalistic system, but it comes from a sense of belonging, right? People want to feel like they are part of a community, and that's really what builds culture. For you to have a cultural, there's a cultural theory that says that what makes a people is all these different things that interconnect within a group, right? So when you have people who say, I am Fulani, for example, and they have a code system that they live by, they would want to abide by that code system. If you say, I'm Yoruba, you want to abide by that code system. But what is happening in the world today, which is not just about tribe, it's generally everywhere, things are falling apart. People are beginning to say, mine is better than yours, or I don't see why you should get this or that. And it's really terrible. And that is where the breakdown of cultural diplomacy comes in. Because if we know ourselves and we have that mutual understanding, and I know that today I see people walking on the streets wearing a certain type of outfit, for example, I'm not going to attack them because I know why. And I know where they are coming from. So if we get to know ourselves better and understand what we did, I'm a photographer. And as a photographer, one of the best jobs that I had at the time was I loved documenting cultural weddings, the traditional side of things, because I got to learn about the communities, learn about what was important to them. I was recently in Yauri, and I sat with the group of old women that were about to convey the bride, and sitting to hear them, the wisdom with which they spoke to the lady as part of the traditional rites, it was very touching to me. We're becoming a society where we are one, self-minded. We are no longer a communal society. And we say this in journalism, that society is a watchdog. When it comes to a point where we're no longer thinking of the big picture and we're only thinking about ourselves, things will continue to break down. And that is why it is, again, extremely important for us to know and learn about each other. Because once we understand ourselves, it comes with peace, it comes with security.
This takes us invariably back to a cultural renaissance, as
yes.
you talked about, and how CBAC is prosecuting this.
Yes. So for us, because obviously our job is not just to promote, preserve, and propagate, we are going to change the way things are done. We are looking at how culture can add value in the various sectors. So let me give an example. We have, everybody knows our adire, for example, the tie-dye system, the way we do things. Back then, there was a system where they used cassava plants to make the gel. So it's batik style, where they design the fabrics using the cassava gel before dyeing it. If today we say we're going to revive that system, we're going to need the cassava. What does that do? It extends a value chain where the cassava farmers now have people that are buying those products just to create this thing. The same when it comes to our cotton. The cotton industry is totally, it's abysmal. It's no longer like it used to be. The same when it came to groundnuts. Like if we look at our cultural products, our own indigenous products, how do we ensure that we revive those spaces so that agriculture gets to thrive, export and trade gets to thrive, sustainability and gets to thrive, because we're not looking at things holistically. When one aspect of something fails, the others do. So I'll give a simple example. I've found a community where they love doing the saki. It's called Hausa, the Hausa traditional fabric. It's the same as Ashoke and the one in the Igbo land too. These are fabrics that we wore. But when Western produce came, what happened? Our manufacturing, our different, Kaduna had a whole textile industry. It's crashed because we're importing cheaper and more affordable fabrics that really don't add any value to our story and who we are culturally. If we say we're reviving these spaces and you fix a system where we want to export these authentic African fabrics, for example, to the global diaspora, you're automatically also supporting the cotton trade. So value chain of culture is way deeper than we can imagine.
I'm enjoying this, because we started off thinking, well, it's just all about dances, music and dance, and now we're seeing other aspects of it. So at this point, the question would be, how culturally aware are the now generation? The ones often referred to as the Gen Zs
and the Gen Alphas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So we're looking at things from the perspective of what did they inherit. My generation clearly dropped the ball in certain aspects, but it didn't start with us, right? If you grow up in a system where you don't even understand your language, I couldn't speak my language until a certain age. I remember very clearly my dad was speaking to myself and my brother, and he spoke in Hausa, and we're both looking at him like, what's he saying? The next day we were on a plane to Sokoto. My dad was like, nope, I cannot have children that are not speaking my language. But sometimes you don't realize that you're not impacting. And it's happening with me as well, because my own children now have a whole melting pot of cultures, from Plateau to Niger to Kebbi to the UK. It's like a whole community of different cultures. And what side would they pick? So I love the fact that they are culturally vast, but also it doesn't allow them learn deeply about many of the different cultures that they have inherited. So there is that. There is also the fact that most people, urbanization is happening. So people are moving away from their local communities to go to find money. And in doing that, they are disconnecting from the culture. Igbo land, a lot of people go back home. Christmas is a big deal. Everybody has a mansion in the village. The children can come home. that is a culture in itself. But how many people can afford to do that today? So the same thing, urbanization, development can pull us away from who we are. And then at the same time, we have to be very deliberate. So I'm really glad today that I'm seeing websites coming up where we're teaching languages. I met a young man in China that is teaching Hausa over there. And you have people who are teaching Igbo in Canada. You have people who are teaching Yoruba in Atlanta. It's picking up. But like I said, because of that loss, the younger people are also now asking, who are we?
All right. We'll answer that question right after this.
Just close the doors, and you're in a world of your own. Travel is not just about the destination, it's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better.
So who are they? Who are we?
So I'll take it to our ministry now, because this is one of the strongest and most important things. We want to ensure the younger generation are coming back on board. And that is why we actually have a ministry that is focused on this. We are no longer looking at culture just from the old school way. They've created their own version of what their culture is, right? For us, how do we ensure that we push these things in there? So you look at the National Gallery of Art. They have a huge national collection that is absolutely amazing. And now they're collaborating with the younger generation to do exhibitions where they're learning about the past, but they're also bringing on their own ideas. You have the National Institute for Cultural Orientation that has started, they have a school and an institute where you can go and learn about different cultural aspects, but not just from about that. Even as civil servants, you can go there to learn about culture and all the different ways that you can interconnect it to the different spaces. You have the National Council for Arts and Culture that recently just had the NAFEST. NAFEST was a big deal. It brought all of Nigeria together, and it's back. Bigger, not as big, but definitely better when it comes to the different aspects of it. So there were dance competitions, acting competitions, music, film, all of the different things, even the clothing, like fashion is a big deal. Nigeria has a lot of contribution to the GDP based on fashion. We have a lot of contributions to the GDP based on film. Who are the people creating these things? It's the younger generation. The younger generation of people are integrating our fabrics. They're integrating our designs. As I'm talking to you now, we have a young curator that is going to host the Nigeria Pavilion at the London Design Biennale. You have the likes of, obviously, the Burna Boys, the Remas, that are bringing up conversation and dialogue. Rema had a show, and the whole world, specifically us, kept talking about how devilish it looked. But what did that do? It created dialogue. It created conversation online where people are like, okay, but if he's showcasing his culture, how is that devilish? Conversations started happening on that, and then the younger generation are like, oh, you know what, we're going to hold on to our own. And Benin today is one of the strongest musical sensations are coming out of that space because of the likes of Rema, who are building on these conversations. So it's not just about getting young people to come and do stuff. How do we inspire them to use this culture, to remind themselves of who their ancestors were, but also moving it forward in a more innovative way? That is what we're trying to do. So I'll take it back to the ministry. You have the National Theatre. National Theatre was recently in India. They are learning all the different dances so that they too can help to train and support. Today we have TikTok, where you have young people making millions just from dancing on the street. How do we make sure that it's our dance that is being put out there? And the global community are catching on. You have people in Asia that are dancing African dances now. You have people all over in Europe that are now utilizing our music and our different sound, whether it's drums, our own versions of guitars, that gives a more authentic sound. So we go back to the ministry again. You also have the NCMM. NCMM today, they made a batch of T-shirts that sold out overnight. It had our stories, it had the kingdoms on them. The younger people are now creating merchandise that are connected to who we are and the stories that we tell, earning money from this also. I just recently got a briefcase that has the Agbada designs, and the name of the brand guy was Ethnic. And I was so you know, I was just like, wow, this is global standard. He's making backpacks, he's making trainers, but with our traditional fabrics and designs. So I believe the younger generation are the future of cultural renaissance, because apart from just utilizing the aspects for making money, they are also putting in the work to go back home to say, you know what, my grandfather was a blacksmith. I want to understand how he survived then and what I can do with it tomorrow. So things are changing, and we're here to support them.
Well, it brings us to the question of Nigeria being the arrowhead of this movement to show what black Africans and Africans have contributed to civilization. And
Yes.
You started off by saying that Africans developed the world. And so the big question today would be,
How do we develop ourselves? So that's where we are now. Obviously, the ministry has been reviewing the various policies, whether it's the cultural policy, the intellectual property laws, various other policies. You can see the PEBEC, for example, are working on enabling business across here. We have to be able to say that we are leaders, not just with music, because a lot of people think we're just here for entertainment. But generally, as Nigeria, who spearheaded and brought 59 different countries here that learned from us, we learned from each other. We have to continue that. It's a global village today. What I'm doing in my village in Argungu is being shown globally. We have cultural festivals that are making it onto the various lists globally, because it's very important for them to be tangible and intangible assets that can be utilized. The museums globally are using us to make millions of dollars. They're using our same items that are seen as demonic to have tourists flying from different countries to go see them. So when we talk, we look down on ourselves. So as Africans, as Nigerians, we need to stop looking outside. We always say the grass is greener on the other side, but we hear the stories of what people are going through externally. If we continue to all give up, I've wanted to give up. I know how hard it is, and it can be, to be in a space sometimes when things aren't working. But we can't all say we're leaving. If we do, then what happens to our lands? Today you see the fight in South Africa. People are fighting and demanding, we want our land back. We cannot thrive, we cannot survive. Other people are thriving on your own land. Today, we have people begging to get visas to come to Nigeria. We have investors bringing in their money. They're not stupid. The money is here. We have the resources. We have the human resources to achieve whatever it is we need to do. We just need to get our acts together and say that we are proudly African, we are proudly Nigerian, and we will put in our effort in our own little way, because it's little by little. Everybody has to put in their own. Politically, we look at things from the perspective of, I have to focus on mine. But when it's just you, everybody else will fail, and you will fail. I had a conversation with an ambassador who said to me, we cannot have Nigeria fail, because if Nigeria fails, Africa fails. Nigeria is the biggest when it comes to human resources. In the nearest future, you have countries that have an aging population that need us. And it's not even a choice. They actually don't have a choice, because their population is aging, and we have the youngest population. So we cannot give up. And I say this to young people who are listening to this, that whether we like it or not, the struggle is real. We're all going through it. It's not everywhere is perfect. When the global community are showing you things, they show you the best. We are the first to finish ourselves. Right. We are the first to talk terrible about ourselves. But we have to be happy about what we have and stop focusing on what we don't, but add value to what we already have existing. And that is our hope and prayer, that the change will come where the younger people are proud and can add their own value.
All right, there's still more ahead right after this.
Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
We've been having this interesting conversation and looking at all aspects of it. And it's clear that this is all interwoven, interconnected.
Yes.
And so we would ask you the level of collaboration going on with the various sectors internally. You talk about tourism, you talk about
trade,
and how all these get it into the mix as to produce the kind of results which you say this administration is really pushing for?
So we all have ministerial KPIs. The ministers have been given their KPIs from the presidency, and they're supposed to meet up. Some of these KPIs are interconnected to the agenda of the president, right? So the ministers have sent it down to us also. We have our own KPIs. We have also sent it down to our different directors to say, how do we feed into this? Because a lot of things were done in the past without data collection, without understanding. Like, we just would create things sometimes without necessarily sitting down to use data, research, and things like that. MBS has been empowered in the last 10 years, so we can see that we now have our own data, unlike in the past where we were using the UN or World Bank data collection systems. We now have a system where we actually have these KPIs to say, for us to achieve this, that, and that must have come together to get this. And that is why I gave you the example of using fabrics to support agriculture as a value chain, for example, or the other way around. Today we have presidential committees that are working together. We have interministerial committees that are working together. As agencies within our ministry, we all have MOUs between each other where we can support each other and where we have a strength, you have a strength. How do we come together? So, for example, you have the Film Corporation headed by Ali Nuhu, who is an actor, who is someone that has been in the space, so he knows what is missing and what is needed. He will say, okay, you are good with culture. Can I speak with you on how best we can collaborate? So we have a lot of collaborations happening where we're thinking outside the box, because really and truly diversification is one of the key aspects of this administration, where we want the Nigerian economy diversified. A lot of sectors have been abandoned. For us, we may be the entertainment, the culture, the tourism, but let's take it to tourism. Tourism is something that for people to tour your space, there must be security. You cannot have a tourism space where things are insecure if guests are coming, right? You must have hospitality, because if a guest comes, they must have a place to stay, they must have where they can eat food, and these value chains connect to whether it's restaurants, hotels, drivers, vehicles, transport, things like that. It becomes a more holistic system. When we're creating policies where we're all thinking about the different aspects that we fit into, then we're able to achieve. It may take longer. I know a lot of us want things to move as fast. We really want things to wake up, but then what are we also doing as citizens and individuals? I say this because I used to be one of those that would protest on the streets. I've done it in the past. I've always been a documentary person who has used storytelling to tell stories. The policies would not add up. Today we have a system where all of these things are being looked into individually and together. And we understand that if one sector fails, we all fail, right? So I feel this administration has that in play. The policies from the Buhari administration that had commenced at that time are now beginning to be implemented. And there are new policies now that will take time for us to get to. The world is moving fast. The policies aren't moving as fast as they should. So I'll give an example. We looked at our paperwork. If today you steal my intellectual property, the fines were still from 1978, for example, or from 2002. So if I'm fining you on a price back then, and you as an intellectual property person cannot now not make the money, then it's a failure. But these policies, they don't get fixed overnight. We're working with the National Assembly. We're working with the different agency heads and ministries to see what policies can we put together to ensure that every aspect is solidified. If there's something you are doing that connects to mine, what policies do we need to do to fix to ensure that we're able to achieve? Policies exist. It's not that they don't. Our problem in Nigeria has been implementation. That has always been the issue. And as citizens, we have to think and review. I was a regular citizen. I was an artist. I really just wanted to live my life and tell stories. I ended up coming and moving to the government side. And I know individuals that told me I was a sellout.
All right. And so that's what we'll talk about in the final moments of this program in just a minute.
From one hotel room to another one. This is the Game Changer seat. Fly Emirates. Fly better.
Well, there's a lot we've talked about.
Yes.
But again, one aspect which you started talking about and which I'd like to explore for just a moment longer is the question of trust in an administration. And so, yes, things are tough. And you have these well laid out plans of renaissance, of promoting African heritage and all that. And the obvious question on the streets would be, can this administration be trusted to follow through on these?
So we've always had a trust deficit. It's been maybe 30 years of eroding trust constantly. I know I've had my own issues. I know there are things that I have wanted to see coming out of government that were not done. And that's the reason I ended up crossing to the other side. But that is where we have the problem, because we see things from an us against them perspective. If everybody decides that, you know what, we're leaving them, they need to fix this, they. Who are the they? They were citizens like you and I. I was a citizen, and it's my sector. So I decided to make that shift because I realized you can't allow people who are not the ones who do this job or understand your space to create the solutions for you. It's not going to work. And I think that's one of the things I love about us as a ministry. Apart from having a minister that's an artist and a cultural enthusiast, almost everyone that is heading the agency under the Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism and Creative Economy are people who have been within those spaces. Unlike before, where it was just political appointments, it wasn't necessarily about the technocrats and what value they can add. So I think that's what is different. We have people who are within these sectors, and that trust, it will take a while. We have a deficit in the form of communication. Right, we're still very old school in many of the things that we do, and I'm seeing the difference already. Ministry of Digital and Communications are doing their bit. You have the likes of NITDA that are doing their bit. But the point is that everybody must still be able to sit on that table to add their value. And they will say to you, but how does that change the cost of Gary in the market? We all suffer it. We know and we understand. And the one thing that I know that as Nigerians we must do better is the office of the citizen waking up to understand that they also have a part to play. If you allow someone and give someone a space without accountability, they will go ahead and do as they please. So we can shout as much as we want, but are we following up on these processes? My mother was a justice of the Supreme Court. I know the amount of attacks that we got, growing up. And even now, where they talk about the judiciary system. You have lawyers that are not doing things the way they should. Some of them get fined, some of them don't. So all of these combined things create that trust deficit where citizens will say, I do not trust that these people do what they need to do. And we do see these black eggs, I say, that end up doing as they please. So citizens, we have to wake up. And for those of us who are in this space, we really need to think about our future. It's not just about us, it's about our children and our grandchildren. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but we have to learn to add our own values as citizens.
Okay, it's not only the judiciary and all of the forms that have come under scrutiny. There is a huge contributor to all the things that you've talked about that of recent has also come under the microscope. And I'm talking here about the media.
Yes.
Journalism, broadcasters, and we cannot pretend not to know where you're coming from. And I can't resist this and say, yes, you just spoke about your mom in the judiciary.
Yes.
But we all know the great Adamu Augie in television broadcasting. And today, here we are.
And it was his birthday yesterday. So my father was a journalist, and even at the time during the military era, I remember what he went through to even study. I know a time he had to run away to Ghana because they were not allowed to even learn journalism. And you look at the aspect of journalism and the media as a societal watchdog. I studied mass communication, and it breaks my heart that I can tell you today, and I'm saying this to the journalists that are watching, because you do not understand how much value you are eroding when you don't do your job properly. We need the media to wake up. The younger generation today, you pick up a microphone, you pick up the camera, and you say, I'm a content creator, and you say, I'm a journalist. That's not journalism sometimes. We have to be able to tell all sides of the story. There must be balance. There must be ways that we find the stories that matter. How many investigative journalists do we have today? I say this and I sit here. You know how nervous I was to come on board here. Because as a child, I was saying this to my mom, that once we hear, my name is Cyril Stober, it's time to go to bed. They're sending us home. So it's an honor to be here, and you are someone that I genuinely respect with the kind of things that you put on the table. But it's very important for us. The communication, the stories. You don't only put things when you are paid. What value can you add to tell the stories that matter?
All right. And it is on that note we have to end this conversation. And thank you so very much for coming on. We appreciate you. We hope you come again.
The honor is mine, sir. The honor is mine. I truly appreciate being here.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Honorable Aisha Adamu Augie, Director General, CBAC. It's been interesting talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week we'll be back with one and Cyril Stober. Bye for now.